now we need to drain the beer, or I guess technically that's still wort, into our fermentation bucket. So I get to do my daily workout. The one thing I usually like to do at this point is check on the gravity to make sure that we're still somewhere in the ballpark of where we meant to be. I think I'm going to consider this sacrificial, so I'm not going to worry too much about sanitizing this. It's sufficiently sanitized for our purposes. Is this floating? It's floating. So it's probably not the easiest thing to read on a camera. It's pretty hard to read it live as it is. Hopefully you can read that before I read it. Then you can feel like you're in on the secret. Looks like we're at about 1.05 something. This might even be 1.056. 1.054-ish is my guess. We'll let this settle out a little bit, but that's not a bad place to be, 1.054. That'll get us fairly alcoholic. That's the kind of original gravities I saw for other Hellas beers. So now we just gotta drain this down into the bucket. Now, part of this trick is that we would like as little of the muck as possible, but also we want to get air into our wort at this point, because all of that boiling drove all the oxygen out. Eventually our yeast are going to need to eat, so that's hence the strainer. The strainer will take out any hops in here and also aerate the wort as it goes through. Now if I hold this up here, I'm going to get covered in beer, so I'm going to do this nice and low. And you can see that there's a significant amount of spray in this process. That was the goal. I want spray. You can also see a lot of hoppy muck coming out. And that's just fine. I think one of you asked in the questionnaire whether I had come up with anything unique in brewing, and this is probably about as unique, even though it's not that unique, that I've come up with that I didn't read somewhere else. Although I suspect somebody before me has come up with this. Now, if you've been paying attention, you can study a little bit of hydrodynamics in this. You'll notice that the stream of water is coming down more and more straight. It's not arcing out, and that's because the pressure inside the tank is dropping, because more and more of the beer is outside rather than inside. So at some point we'll probably have to tilt it to make sure that we get as much of the beer out as possible. Alright, we're getting pretty low here. We're going to get a lot of muck come out at the end. that's good. We'll let this kind of drain through for a minute. I do want to maximize my yield here. We did work at this pretty hard. Although that one very last sip might not matter so much. Just have to get this to a sink. Okay, so you may have noticed I didn't take the thermometer out, and that was actually quite on purpose. Because I'm going to leave this thermometer in here because this is going to now go into my lagering box to get it down to temperature for pitch. For that, we do need an airlock just to make sure it's nice and safe. So, just so you're in on the secret, I usually fill my airlock with sanitizer, throw a cap on, and politely insert. It shouldn't be bubbling, because if it were, then that would mean there's yeast inside. So we gotta pitch this at 50 Fahrenheit, which means we need to get it to 50 Fahrenheit, and I don't want to leave it outside. So into the lagering box it goes. And it's like 40 pounds of beer in there. Got a little workout going. Gotta make sure the lagering box is still lagering. Since it's doing that, now my Kolsch, the last thing I brewed in here was set to 62 degrees. We gotta get this down to 50, so down we go. Assuming this wants to play ball. There you go, 50 Fahrenheit. And we're gonna let it keep its 6-degree range. So momentarily we should hear the fridge kick in. There's a little thermocouple that I sneak in here that measures the temperature. Do have to make sure that that is not covered up by anything, but it is nice and safely nestled next to the beer. Hopefully you can see it in the video.
Oh, there it is. Oh.
So the thermocouple will measure our temperature. Got to make sure that it measures the temperature somewhere in the environment. It doesn't get covered up. So we've given this a night to try and cool down. Fridge was struggling. It was actually getting quite hot to the touch, so I gave it a break overnight at around 62. I threw some ice in there this morning. We're still not down to 50, but in the end, you don't want to let your wort sit around forever and ever being warm and without yeast in it, because if anything else is in there, that other thing might be growing. So we're gonna check on this. Check the actual temperature, and then pitch yeast and hope that it all goes well. So first things first, we gotta figure out what the actual temperature in here is. And this is why I left that thermometer in there. In case you were wondering, I washed my hands for 20 seconds before I did this. So this is at 64, which isn't great, but it's somewhere. And we're just gonna roll with it, because sometimes you just roll with it.